24 hours ago, President Trump was picking a fight with two former presidents, claiming they didn't show enough respect to the families of fallen service members.
And late tonight, a war widow and U.S. congresswoman went after the president, saying that he made insensitive comments on the day a soldier's body was returned home.
KCAL 9 political reporter Dave Bryan here now with the story that's developing right now, Dave.
It is a developing story emerging late today, and we'll see where it leads in the next couple of days. The president's comments have drawn swift condemnation from a war widow and a congresswoman, and they come on a day filled with controversy and a surprising development over health care. And there are new developments now on another issue, how presidents contact and comfort the families of fallen soldiers. President Trump criticized President Obama and other presidents who he said did not speak with the mourning families of fallen military heroes. But now a Democratic congresswoman from South Florida says President Trump made insensitive comments Tuesday to the wife of one of the four soldiers who were killed nearly 2 weeks ago in Niger, 25-year-old Army Sergeant David T. Johnson.
David was a young man from our community who gave his life for our country. He's a hero. I was in the car when President Trump called. He never said the word hero. He said to the wife, well, I guess he knew what he was getting into. How insensitive can you be? And my heart just aches for the family.
This comes just one day after President Trump accused President Obama and other past presidents of not putting much effort into comforting the families of fallen soldiers.
The traditional way, if you look at President Obama and other presidents, most of them didn't make calls.
Staffers for Presidents Obama, Clinton, and George W. Bush were outraged, one of them calling President Trump a liar and a deranged animal. Trump responded Tuesday by challenging the naysayers to contact his chief of staff, John Kelly, whose son, a Marine, was killed in action in 2010, to ask about whether he ever received a call from President Obama.
I mean, you could ask General Kelly, did he get a call from Obama? You could ask other people. I don't know what Obama's policy was.
It is absolutely bizarre. This bizarre conduct.
Former Vice President Joe Biden broke his 9-month silence on speaking about President Trump during an interview at the Biden Institute, University of Delaware, and ripped the president in a 7-minute tirade.
Violating the norms of personal conduct generates more anxiety and fear than any policy prescription that this president has enunciated.
Biden joined his good friend John McCain, who unleashed a scathing attack on President Trump on Monday without actually mentioning his name, but everyone knew who he was talking about.
To refuse the obligations of international leadership and our duty to remain the last best hope of Earth for the sake of some half-baked, spurious nationalism cooked up by people who would rather find scapegoats than solve problems.
On Tuesday, President Trump, who made the rounds of conservative radio talk shows, sounded like he was chomping at the bit to fight back.
Yeah, well, I hear it, and people have to be careful because at some point I fight back. Yeah. You know, I'm being very nice. I'm being very, very nice. But at some point I fight back, and it won't be pretty.
Which apparently had little impact on Senator McCain, who doubled down on his criticism of the unnamed president in an interview on Tuesday.
What I was talking about is an environment here of non-productivity, of a reversion to the attitude of the 30s, which was one of the major reasons why we fought World War II.
In the midst of this war of words, President Trump embraced a bipartisan deal to temporarily restore Obamacare subsidies that benefited low-income health care policyholders, only days after he decided to cut off those payments.
Chairman Alexander and I were able to find common ground on a number of steps to stabilize the markets and to help protect families from premium spikes as a result of the sabotage we have seen from this administration.
They're fairly close to a short-term solution. The solution will be for about a year or 2 years, and it'll get us over this intermediate hump.
But only moments before that, the president argued the subsidies were simply a get-rich-quick tool for big corporate insurance companies.
They've made a fortune, the insurance companies. So when I knocked out the hundreds of millions of dollars a month being paid back to the insurance companies by politicians, I must tell you that wanted me to continue to pay this. I said I'm not going to do it.
But in a Tuesday night address at the Heritage Foundation, President Trump talked about what his goal really is.
I continue to believe Congress must find a solution to the Obamacare mess instead of providing bailouts to insurance companies.
The Washington Post now reports the proposal's already on shaky ground, with no endorsement from the Republican leadership and some influential House Republicans already panning the whole idea. Now, I want to circle back for a moment to the treatment of Gold Star families by presidents. Remember, General John Kelly declined to comment today on whether President Obama called him despite President Trump's prodding. And you remember that General Kelly's son was killed in 2010 in Iraq. But a White House official who would only address the issue if they remained anonymous told CBS News, "I can tell you Obama did not call General Kelly after the death of his son." Former Obama staffers told CBS News that a year later, General Kelly and his wife attended a private breakfast for Gold Star families at the White House and sat next to the First Lady. Jeff, Lena, back to you.